Hello, everyone. Welcome to the C Squared podcast with Corey and Curtis. We are actually flying solo today. It's just me and him, but we're going to still be talking about some really important topics of things that you should be looking for as a red flag when you are reaching out to different PR people. We have covered red flags with managers, red flags with other industry pros, but Curtis is an industry pro himself, obviously, in the PR world, who's been doing this a lot longer than I have, and he can offer some great insight on what to look for so that you don't end up getting ripped off by some shyster.
Shyster. Wow.
That's right. I busted out the Yiddish on this one.
Wow. I'm impressed, Corey.
All right. So, Curtis,
yes,
you've been doing this for a few years, one or two, maybe, potentially.
Yep.
And I know you know like everybody in the business and you've seen a lot of shady practices. So what would be like the number one thing people should, hone in on when they're reaching out to a PR person as this is not the right situation?
Before we get into it, I want to mention one thing.
Oh, well, okay then.
It's 10 p.m. at night and we're doing a podcast. This is how dedicated we are.
Well, it's only 10 p.m. for you. It's 7 p.m. for me because I'm super cool and on the West Coast. So
But what day is it, Corey?
I don't know.
Friday. We're doing this Friday night, 10 o'clock and 7 o'clock. We got like seven podcasts lined up for the weekend. Anyways, that's an aside. So that was to toot our own horns for a second. So number one red flag you're asking me for?
Yeah. So what's the early warning signs that, somebody's just reached out and it's the earliest warning sign that people should maybe watch out for as this person may or may not be a good person to work with?
Okay. Well, number one, I mean, I hate to say this because when people are starting out, you got to do cold outreach. I mean, I had to do cold outreach when I first started out. I'm sure most people do. But there are PR quote unquote companies that do a lot of cold outreach to literally everyone. Like they just go on Bandcamp, they hit up everybody that's on the new release list, like literally everyone. And they'll just DM everybody. They'll like it seems like it's not a real reach out, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense?
So no attempt at building any kind of a real connection or a real relationship. They're just going after anybody and everybody.
Yeah.
And there's no real effort. It's all a copy and paste, just going after whoever you can get.
Yeah. But I mean, at the same token, I mean, when you're starting out, I mean, sometimes you make mistakes like that. Again, like I said, when I started out, I did the same thing. So that's not necessarily a red flag, but it is at the same time, if you know what I mean.
So what would be the right way to do cold outreach versus?
I mean, I
know what I look for cold outreach, but I mean, what would be from your perspective? Because you've done the cold outreach. I've done cold outreach too, but you've done a lot of cold outreach. What's the best way to go about it so you don't get red flagged?
Okay. Well, it can be kind of hard. This is kind of tricky because it kind of depends upon your written social skills, I guess. Because sometimes like people can't judge tone in an email. So it kind of depends upon how you write, I guess. I mean, I'm not the world's best writer myself, but I think I can communicate, in a proper enough manner that I can be understood, but what my intention is. But like, let's say, okay, so if someone like you said, if it's copy and paste and it's obviously copy and paste and there's all these promises in it, I mean, that's like the main red flag. But I mean, like for what your question is the right way. Like, I mean, the right way would be to actually communicate with the person and show interest in something that they do and actually communicate that. Like, for example, if you're trying to hit up a band and you're a PR, I would start by talking about their music, saying I really like their music. I saw they were putting something out, and then I would go, I'm from Doer PR. This is what I've done. These are some of my current clients. These are my rates. If you're interested, hit me up. I usually don't have to do that though, because I usually get enough people contacting me or referring that I don't have to anymore. But if I did, that's what I would do.
Yeah. And see, I've gotten those kind of cold emails too. And those are the kind of people that I would rather work with, who they've referenced something, they don't just say, oh, I'm a huge fan of your music.
Yeah.
say, I'm a huge fan of XYZ release,
Yeah.
or, you know, I've been really into death metal for years, and your approach in this area, or just something that shows that you actually listen to it and you're not just blowing smoke.
Yeah, and it's the same thing when you're shopping for a PR. Like you can
Mhm.
kind of tell, like I can tell when I get a copy paste email when someone reaches out to me, for example, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, you can kind of tell, and then you know, there's you just kind of get a feel for it after a while. But like, okay, so let's say a PR reaches out to you, and it's just like, you know, hello, my name is Curtis Dewar. I work for Dewar PR. I'm looking for new clients. Please check my rates here. And one main thing, just to bring it up, hopefully I'm not going off track here, is if there's an add to cart button, that is a huge, massive red flag. Just
I've actually never seen that. People do
they're
that?
all over the place. They're all over the place. They're all over the fucking place.
Oh, that's insane.
Yeah, if you see an add to cart button on a PR or consultant or management page, just run the fuck away. Don't go near that. They are taking anyone and everything 99% of the time. Sometimes they say they do check your music, and that's a condition. That's pretty rare. Just from what I've seen, because I've seen some of these PR places just push some terrible stuff.
Yeah, so have
So
I.
yeah, so I mean, like, what'll happen sometimes in that case, and I hopefully I'm not going off track here,
No, this
is
is super valuable, because I've actually never seen somebody be like have an online store for a la carte PR like that.
once we get off the phone, I will actually send you some links to some people that I'm thinking of right now. So like if you get the like if you like here's what's going to happen is if you get the add to cart PR, all they're going to do is they're going to take your music. They're not going to listen to it. They're going to upload it to probably Google Drive, or they're going to upload it to like WeTransfer or something stupid like that that's unprofessional. And they're just going to copy and paste anything you send them. If you send them like 2 words, that's going to be your press release that's going out. I actually was shown a review that was in a major magazine where all it was it talked about how the quote unquote PR, who's a dollar store PR who charges $50 for 3 months, all they did was send the shittiest MP3s. They were like, I think they were at like 160 kbps or however you say it.
Oh,
So it was like low. It might have even been 72 or something stupid like that. And it was like, they didn't check it. The sound quality was horrible. And all the press release stated was something like, this is doom metal or something stupid like that. And like 80% of the review was just bitching about what the PR did. So
wow. I mean, I've gotten some really gnarly stuff from PRs. And I guess I've gotten some really gnarly stuff that I didn't even check whether or not it was from a PR or a band. That is what you're actually saying. So yeah, maybe I'm actually being harder on bands than I should be, because I didn't realize it was a PR and not a band that was doing this.
Well, it could be, it might not be, right? But there are, like, I don't want to name names on this show. I mean,
oh yeah, definitely no.
Well, I did the other day with John Asher. So if anybody wants to go back and listen to the podcast we did with John Asher, I specifically named at least 1 or 2 people in that episode who you want to stay away from, but I'm not going to name them now because I don't want to embarrass Corinne. But basically, where am I going with this? Basically, a lot of these guys, all they do is that they just take the music and they take whatever you send and they blast it to a list. They're not doing PR. All they're doing is an email blast. They're not staying in touch with anyone. They're not asking for coverage. All they're doing is blasting to a list. Nothing else. Like, it's literally just an email blast.
That actually brings me to like one of my red flags for PRs that I've noticed is list size.
Yeah.
So like, say you're engaging with somebody who, you know, you've gotten to the point where you're thinking about contracting them, and they say that they have a list of 15,000 or 20,000 people that they're going to be sending your music to. There is no feasible way to maintain relationships with that many people, and all they're doing is exactly what you said, is sending out an email blast and nothing else.
One thing I also want to point out, there's not 20,000 people that review metal or play metal. There's not. I mean, there's just no way. Like, I don't believe it. Like, my list, I'll be fully transparent. My list is about 1,300.
Mhm.
And I probably have a good relationship with maybe 400 of those, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, I mean, I can't keep a relationship with all 1400, but I mean, I got a relationship with like maybe 300 to 400. There's no way, I can guarantee you, there's no way that there's a legitimate 10,000 list. Like, I mean, they might have a lot of those like blog spots and shit on them, or they might
Mhm.
have like, a lot of the, like, I hate to say this, but a lot of Russian sites and stuff, which are really sketchy, might be on the list, or it could be like
Other
Brazilian ones.
PRs?
Yeah, other PRs. Yeah, there's one person that just, they blast other PRs. And
There's one person
yeah,
that has me on their list 3 times. My metal injection email, and they somehow got a hold of 2 of my personal emails, and I am on their list 3 separate times.
yep, yeah, that's common too. Because I'm as
Mhm.
well. I want to point something else out. I'm also on that individual's list for 3 different email addresses. 3.
Yes. So they may have a list of 10,000, but 2/3 of them are going to be repeats.
Yeah, well, it's not just that, but also,
Mhm.
I mean, the thing you want to realize is that the main point that Corinne's making is the fact that the list size doesn't really matter that much. I mean, it does and it doesn't. Like if they have a 50 list, if their list is 50 people, that's probably not very good. I mean, like I would say like anybody that had under 500 contacts would be very suspect. And 500 even I think is too low, but I'm just saying like under 500 is probably pretty suspect. And anyone who says that they have over like maybe 5,000 maybe would be very suspect, because I would imagine like someone like Metal Blade, who has the entire world in every fucking territory, they probably have like a 5 to 10,000 press list, I would imagine. But
But
not,
they're Metal Blade.
yeah, they're Metal Blade. But I'm very, very certain that the vast majority of PRs do not have like every fucking country in the world and their metal press on their list, right? Like there's no way. You know what I mean? So where were we going with this with the list? List
No,
size
the
is,
list size is one of the red flags.
yeah,
Is
list size is
my whole
one of
thing.
the red flags. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, you can be too small and you can be too high. But one thing I want to point out again, just with list size, is that again, the person could be just starting out, right?
Mhm.
And if they're just starting out, they're going to have a small list. But if the person's just starting out, if they're honest, they're going to be, they're going to be upfront with you. They're going to say, yeah, I'm just starting out. And, usually they're not going to charge you, like, for example, $1,000 or 500, whatever it is for a month of PR. They're going to do something. They're going to do a lower price because they're trying to establish themselves.
Mhm.
So anyways, I think we covered lists. What's your next red flag? And then I want you to ask me some questions.
That was probably my biggest red flag. So let's actually let's switch back to you for a bit. So what is, other than we've got, the add to cart button,
Yep.
people who are cold reaching out, and, the copy and paste style and list size. So say somebody's in deep with, thinking about contracting somebody, they've had several conversations. What are some other red flags that they should look for?
Well, I would cut it back even further if I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I mean, just when you start to quote unquote shop for PR, like here's the very first thing is that I know most people will just go to Google, right? But that's not necessarily correct, because the people who are going to be at the top of the page in Google are going to be like the top priced PRs, right? They're going to be like people like, for example, someone charging like $5,000 who, does PR for, I'm not Metallica, but I'm exaggerating a bit.
Like Lamb of God.
Yeah, like Lamb of God. I don't think she'd probably be at the top of the page. But someone who's expensive, that's kind of out of your league, right? So you don't really want to start there, because then you're going to kind of be like, get a bad idea that, okay, I got to come up with $6,000 or otherwise I can't do anything, right? So what you want to do is you want to start looking at the pages of some bands that that are comparable in size, to see who they list on their Facebook page or on their Twitter or whatever as their PR. I would start,
or even asking for referrals if they don't list somebody.
Yeah. Either look there or start asking. And if you know anyone that's used PR in the past, start asking. Like, just start asking with your network or bands that you know about that are somewhat same size that you know have gotten coverage in places, and just start getting names of those people. And then once you get the names of those people, you want to start doing some background checks. And the way that you do a background check is the very first thing you want to check, in my opinion. Some people say you should check the website. I don't think so, because my website's shit and I know I'm not shit. But
I can fix that for you, side note.
I would love it if you could one of these days, but I know you don't have time right now, so I'm going to forbid this, but laying the foot down. But thank you for the offer. Sounding like your dad now. I forbid this. Sorry.
Okay, work dad.
Work dad. What was I saying here? So I think you should start checking their social media, because one thing, and this is not always a perfect rule of thumb, but if the PR isn't posting on social media and they have no web presence, that's like a huge red flag. There's a guy in the UK who does a lot of cold email outreach, who has absolutely zero web presence, but people always get taken in by a scam because they don't bother to check the fact, they don't bother to really put two and two together. The guy doesn't have a Facebook, he doesn't have a Twitter, he doesn't have an Instagram. He's got a website that looks like it was done in like 2005, and that's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think like right there, like the web presence is a major red flag, because most legitimate people are going to have a web presence of some sort. You know what I mean?
I mean, your whole job is to talk to people. So if you're not publicly talking to people on something like, I know your jam is Twitter, then I mean, that's a massive red flag. You're right, because that's your entire existence, is talking to people and networking.
But there is a caveat to this. There is a word of warning, not a word of
There's
warning,
always a caveat.
There is, but that some of these bigger places don't have a web presence, so this isn't always true. So, like for example, I don't think Adrenaline has a big web presence, do they? Like, I mean, she's got the website and she's like huge. You know what I mean?
They predate a lot of this stuff. So that's the difference, is their relationships predate the massive social media boom where it was necessary.
Like she's like considered to be one of the best in the business, and I mean, she doesn't have much of a web presence that I can think of. I don't think she does. I believe that she mainly does it through the bands. But so what I'm saying is, like 99.9% of the time this is true, but that sometimes it's not.
So I guess looking at their web presence, but also their age. So if you're looking at somebody like Adrenaline, who's been around forever, obviously their web presence isn't going to be as crucial, because their relationships have been built over decades rather than 5 years or less.
100%. So web presence is definitely a huge indicator. If the person isn't posting, they don't post reviews, they don't really talk on social media, I would think that there's probably a problem, unless we go back to how long they've been around. And this is easily verified. Like you can ask people, like, who are your clients? And if they don't tell you, that's another red flag, but you can usually find out just from that. I think I missed part of your question. I think I went off on a tangent, didn't I? No,
you had to scale it back because my question was going too deep and too late. So
okay, re-ask it, please.
We had to go back to the beginning a little bit more, back to the Googling phase.
Yeah.
So referrals and word of mouth, definitely the best way to find a PR, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, it is, and it is, but at the same time, again, there's caveats, because sometimes someone may have worked with a PR a few years ago, and maybe they were getting results back then, and then then they let their work ethic slide, and they're not getting as good results anymore. That happens quite a bit. So you want to check both past and present clients, and you also need to kind of be a selective listener, because sometimes some bands also have unrealistic expectations and might be bad mouthing a PR that did a fantastic job. I've seen that many times. Or they thought they should have gotten, like, for example, Metal Injection, but the PR got them lower level stuff, but Metal Injection wasn't interested or whatever. I'm just giving Metal Injection as an example. So there's those factors too. So you got to be a selective listener, because I've had people tell me, like, for example, that John's a crap PR, and I know he's not a crap PR. You know what I mean? I know as a fact he's not a crap PR. I've had people tell me Earsplit is crap, and I know they're not crap. You know, and I've had people tell me that other people are not good, and I'll be like, well, I know as a fact that's not true, because you know, I know who these people are. They've been in the industry for a long time. I've never heard a bad word about them until you kind of came up to me. So you want to kind of be selective with how you on how you listen. So if one band gives you a bad report, I guess is what I'm saying, check it with more than one band. If you're getting like, you know, 4 or 5 bands, all 5 ones you check all say this person is shit, that's probably a good indicator they are. But if one band goes, oh, they sucked, and everyone else went, yeah, they were actually quite good, I was quite happy, or whatever, you know, just be a selective listener. Because also there's times when sometimes a campaign just fucking fails too, right? Like I've had my share of failed campaigns. I'm sure there's people that have thought I was a waste of money, but that happens in all of marketing and PR. There are going to be failed campaigns, so just be a selective listener on that. What's next, Corinne?
Well, I know a lot of people assume that PRs are pretty much just doing what you've said, these, you know, shysters, as I said earlier, are doing, and just sending email blasts. So what is the biggest difference between, or not even the biggest difference, what are the differences? I know what they are, but between what you do versus what everybody assumes you do, and what other people should expect their PR to do if they're doing a good job?
Well, it depends, right? Like, because sometimes I don't have to do direct pitching to people, right? Because some people have this whole thing where they got to have a pitch and they send it to everybody, plus the holics and all the rest of it. I don't always do that, because I mean, I got a lot of relationships where I just can go to someone, hey, you want to do a review? Or I could be just like, sometimes I don't even have to, because the outlet will always do it, or, you know, there's a good chance they will. So, I mean, it depends. There's no real way to answer that, because I mean, it's like, some people just work differently, right? Like with you, for example, I don't think I really have to write a big involved pitch saying, you know, here's this band, blah, 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 like someone else might need to do with you. You know what I mean? It's like we said with Greg the other day, it's kind of like, here's this band, want to do something with it?
But they should be at least doing some sort of, you know, like personal level interaction and kind of bird dogging it a little bit for their clients, if you know what I mean. I don't know if you do you have that term in Canada, bird dogging?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, bird dogging.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a couple different definitions for it. I think I know the one you're referring to, but yeah, I'm a walking dictionary today. Wow, I'm impressed with myself.
It's a Southern thing, for those of you who don't know what I mean. It means like going after something like a hunting dog would after you've shot a bird out of the sky. So
there's also
our non-Canadian, non-US friends.
Yeah. I did know that definition. I read a book about bird dogging one time. It was good. But anyway, a sales book rather about bird dogging. So what was I talking about here? So yeah, I mean, usually you want to have some personal contact going in with the press. I mean, like, it's kind of weird because like with me, it kind of blurs sometimes, because I'm always talking to people and stuff like that. So there's, you know what I mean? It goes kind of from social to pitch, but not pitching at the same time, yet pitching. You know what I mean? So there should be like a lot of, you know, there should be interaction at least. You know what I'm saying? There should be, like, for example, if I go on Twitter, you know, I'm sharing the reviews. I'm talking about my bands. I'm not just talking about myself. I do talk about myself a lot. I talk about Corinne. I talk about Lindsay. I talk about everybody. But you know, you gotta have the band stuff in there too, right? So. But if someone's just, all they're doing is just hitting send on an email, they're not even attempting to get you interviews, they're not doing anything, that's a bad sign, right? And I mean, sometimes, again, I'm not justifying for anybody, but I mean, sometimes PR companies will take on too many clients and people get neglected. So I know I'm kind of being vague in my answers, but I don't, some of the things that are red flags are not necessarily red flags at times, right?
Right.
Am I being clear? I'm trying to like kind of not give like a total, like, you know, this is definitely a red flag when it's not always, you know what I mean?
Are there any that are definite red flags other than the add to cart button?
Yes, definitely the add to cart button. But I would say that anybody that will take you sight unseen, they do not ask you any questions about the music, and they promise you the sky, that is a red flag. There are many people that I've been told, at least, who do this. I've had bands contact me and say, I just need a price. And I'll be like, well, I need to hear your music. And they'll be like, well, we'll give you our music if you give me a price. So sometimes I'll just give the price and I'll be like, I ain't taking you on if I don't like you. And they'll come back and they'll be like, well, so-and-so told us that they get us Kerrang for like $100. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? You know, so-and-so said we get Metal Injection for like $50 or $100 plus this, plus this, plus this. And it's like, that's not true. Like, the publicist doesn't know what they're going to get you at first. They might have connections at Metal Hammer. They might have connections at Kerrang. They might have connections at Metal Injection. But there's no way that they can guarantee you jack shit. There's no way they can guarantee you.
That's right there. That's another red flag, is if they're trying to make concrete, I will get you XYZ.
Yeah.
I think the only concrete thing you can do is, I'll get you coverage.
Well, you can't even necessarily even guarantee that sometimes, because there can be factors where the band just doesn't bite. Like, I'll tell you, I have personally had a campaign where no matter what I did, this band did not fucking bite. I think I got one press release covered. I mean, the band was pissed, obviously, right? But I mean, like, I'm not joking. I actually gave it my all, and it just went thud. So, and I know Asher's told me about a couple where the same thing has happened to him, right? Where it's just like, I don't know what happened, but this didn't take on. So, I mean, yeah, you do want results, but it's like with anything with marketing or advertising, there's no guarantee that you'll get even anything. And if anybody tells you that you're guaranteed, it's wrong. Like, I can pitch you, like, we work together, and I believe you. I believe you like me. So, if I
You're
pitch
all
you
right.
something,
I mean,
I'm
okay.
Yeah. So, but I mean, like, if I pitch you something like, I'm really desperate, I really need this, you still can't guarantee that for me, even if I come to you and I call in a favor. Yeah.
Yeah, because even after it gets to me, if I'm like, hey, Curtis, I'll help you out, it's still got to go through my editor.
Yeah.
Everything still has to pass.
And the same thing happens at Kerrang. The same thing happens at Pitchfork. The same thing happens at Decibel. It's all got to get approved by someone else. And if that person does not approve it, it ain't happening. So unless that PR is the editor-in-chief of that magazine, and that would be pretty damn unethical, you ain't getting jack shit guaranteed to you.
I can even say, like, our editors, they don't do that.
Yep.
Yeah, they won't sit there and tell a band, I'll do this for you after that band's hired them to do. Like, it's not, it doesn't work that way.
Unless you're like the best friend with, Peter Mensch or whatever his name is in Metallica, there's probably absolutely no guarantees that you're going to get anywhere for guaranteed. It's just not going to happen. So I would say that that's an ultimate red flag, is the guarantee, especially of good coverage, and especially if it's like your debut EP or your debut single.
Yeah, definitely with those. I mean, nobody's heard of you yet. Yeah. So you could have the best band in the world, but people are going to be like, I don't know who this is.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you also have to realize, like, one thing is, like, another red flag that you want to be looking out for is if the PR has too many clients. Mm-hmm. Like, I take on a lot of clients. I usually have between 10 to 15 a month, but I feel like I can comfortably handle that. And I haven't had too many complaints. I mean, you sometimes get a complaint, but usually I don't. But if I felt like I was getting like way too much, what I do is I end up paying someone else to help me. Like, for example, if I needed to, I'd probably ask you to help me. Or I got Duncan who can help me, or I got like Ian who can help me. I got a few people I can call on to be like, help me out, right? But if a PR, for example, there's one that was advertising, he has like 100 clients, and he's like charging them like $30 a pop, and it's like 100. That's
an email blaster.
Yeah, like how is that possible? You know what I mean? Okay, this comes back to another red flag. Price is a red flag. If it's too low, it's a red flag. Mm-hmm. If it's too low, it's too good to be true. it's a red flag. So if someone comes up to me, or if you go up to a PR and they tell you that they will charge you $50, someone sent me this last month. I think it was $80 US, I believe, for a year's worth of PR.
Oh dear God, no.
Yeah. The guy emailed me and he's like, what's this? And I'm like looking at him like, I don't know. He's like, how does this guy do this? I'm like, I don't know, because just so everybody knows, like, PR is a business. So not including like my own time, my expenses per month, I have to pay for Holics, which is the software I use to send out the emails. That's a minimum of 150 to 250 per month US dollars that I have to come up with. I also have MailChimp, which is another $25 a month, I believe. I also have to pay for my internet, which is like $100. I have to pay for my phone, which is something like $200 and something a month. What else? I also have to pay for the electricity. Like, my expenses, I could not, I don't understand how you could possibly run a business where you're charging, a year for $75, $75 for a year of PR.
Unless you have 1,000 clients.
Well, even then, you're not going to have the time. Like, I mean, like just for an example, like the cost for Holics I was mentioning right there, like they charge you based on space and bandwidth. So if I go over, I pay, and it's something like $5 a gigabyte or something like that for both storage and bandwidth. So if that person has 1,000 clients or 100 clients, they're going to be on the $1,000 a month plan. So their expenses just went up, and their MailChimp cost, I think, is going to be like even more, because most MailChimp plans, I believe, I have an old plan, but I believe it's like number of sends you get an increase in charge. Maybe I'm mistaken in that, but I believe that's how they do it now.
It depends on what plan you're on. Some of the plans, it's unlimited sends.
Yeah,
but
yeah, that's what I got.
Either way, it's not free and it's not cheap.
Yeah, it's not. And like, also for internet, I don't know what it's like in the United States, but a lot of Canadian places have like the internet cap and stuff like that. So there's a lot of downloading and uploading. Like, I'm lucky I have unlimited 5G internet, but a lot of people have
pay
a
a
cap.
premium. I have my 1 gig upload download that's unlimited, but I pay a premium for that.
Yeah, so you're probably paying like $100 a month or whatever too, right? So
yeah, it's over 100, but I mean, I work with a lot of really big files, so whether it's music or art or anything like that, I have to be able to upload and download fast, or I will go insane. So
yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah, I agree. So, but if a PR is not charging you that, there's something wrong. So, I mean, yes, maybe they're running a sale that month. Okay, fine, that might be a thought, but I mean, just cost-wise, it just doesn't make any sense. So if someone's just doing an email blast and they have like 1,000 clients, the math just doesn't add up. So also, I just thought of another red flag. Unless you wanted to ask me about something more on that.
No, keep going. These are all super helpful for people.
Okay. So
unleash your inner bitch. Just let it out.
Unleash my inner bitch. Another one is where someone, how do I want to phrase this here? Someone kind of, like, if they just kind of seem off, like almost everybody can kind of tell if someone kind of seems a little bit off, because, they might come along and they'll do what I said before, where it's like they'll kind of promise you the world, and then they'll offer you like a low price, and then how am I want to say this? They'll name drop.
Oh, right? Yes.
That's where I'm kind of going with this, the name dropping. So
I have Dave Lombardo coming over for dinner tonight.
Well, or
just like random crap.
Well, not just that, but here's a good one too, though, that a lot of guys on like Instagram will do, like the rapper PR guys and stuff. They'll have worked with like, some major company like Universal for like a week or something like that, or 2 weeks as like the mail boy or something like that. And they'll be like, I worked with like Dr. Dre, that I don't know what label he signed at, but whatever label he's at, when in reality, they were like the lunch lady, right? Yeah. So, technically they worked with Dr. Dre as their coworker or whatever, but in reality, it's like, they're the lunch lady, or they worked in the mail room, or they did nothing basically. And there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people like that, and even people who might have been like, an intern somewhere for a very brief period of time, and then they'll try to ride that as being like, they have a connection to the industry, when in reality they don't. There was one guy that a friend of mine, he got DM'd by this person, and he made it sound like he was this huge bigwig exec used to be a huge bigwig exec at this company, just powerhouse guy. He knows everything about the industry. I went and looked at the guy's LinkedIn profile and his Facebook profile, and I'm not fucking joking you. His job was literally the mail guy. That's literally his job.
I have met I've met some people like that in my marketing days, that it's just like, really?
Yeah. Like they like for sure. Yeah. They worked for Universal. They worked for Sony. Yes, they did. Yes. 100%. But
as the janitor,
yeah, they were mopping the floors or whatever, but yes, they did work for Universal or whoever the heck it is. A good example of this is like like if they're not name dropping, like a lot of people who have worked with the bigger names will not name drop them. They might kind of every once in a while, but a good example is Lyle from MMD Records, who's in South Africa. Like I've known Lyle, I think, for like a year and a half, maybe 2 years now. And he's been on my old podcast before. I've helped him with a few things. We know each other socially. And I just found out last month, he was on a live with me. He let it slip. He actually worked, I think it was for Sony in South Africa, and he actually had to babysit Lady Gaga and Justin Bieber. And he'd never mentioned this before the whole fucking time I've known him. So that proved to me he was legit.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, that's true, because I mean, it's dangerous to name drop like that if you actually have those connections, because you're going to ruin them.
Yeah. Yeah. And babysit is probably the wrong word. He had to be their not that escort's the wrong word. He had to be their point of contact.
Chaperone.
Point of contact. Like when they did shows in Cape Town, he had to be the guy that was the host. Hey, how you doing? Here's your stuff. Blah blah blah. Here's how you get blah blah blah. That type of thing, right? So, but I've never heard Lyle ever name drop that ever. Like, and he wasn't trying to name drop. He was just talking about an experience he had, and I went, what? So. Name dropping is a huge, huge red flag, because a lot of times people will embellish relationships that they have or embellish things that they've done. Right. So if someone tries to tell you, they work for, I don't know who, someone Baroness one time, blah, blah, blah. And they know the singer, I forget his name, John, what's his name? And blah, 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 blah. And they're trying to get a sale out of you. It's probably bullshit, or it's probably embellished. And a lot of people do this as well with, like, for example, like fairly well-known bands. They might just have a passing connection. Like I've had people tell me like they know Albert Mudrain at Decibel, and then you find out all they've done is just added them as a Facebook friend.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
And they're
I wonder
like,
if there's anybody out there like, I know Corey at Metal Injection, because I've gotten a lot of random Facebook requests lately.
I'm sure. Well, I'm sure there is, because they're like, oh, well, she knows who I am.
Nobody knows me.
Corey, you wouldn't believe it, because I've had people tell me that their buddy who's good friends with me has recommended them, and I have no idea who their buddy is. And I look on my Facebook and it's like, oh, they added me like, 6 months ago. Cool. Okay.
That happened with you and I, actually.
Oh yeah.
Some random person was adding me, and I was like, hey, do you know this person?
Oh, yeah.
You're a mutual friend.
Yeah.
And you're, nope.
Yeah. Nope. I don't know. I know about them, but I don't know them.
Exactly.
What other red flags do we want to talk about? So name dropping is another one. Cash is definitely one. Oh,
so what is a reasonable, speaking of price, what is a reasonable person, say they're not as, deep into it as you?
Yeah.
What would be a reasonable charge for somebody who's either just getting started, or they're still building up their contact list? They're maybe a year or less in.
For the PR themselves, you mean?
Yeah. What would be a reasonable amount for somebody to pay if they're not offered it for free? Because I know both you and I have done this when we're, I'm like still learning and still starting out. So everything, well, a lot of what I do is free, not everything, but a bunch of what
I mean, I still do a lot of free work myself. I do a ton of free work myself. But I mean, it depends, right? Like a newer PR, like when I first started out, I was way undercharging. And, you know, I was doing way too much work for way too little cash. And it, you know, it wasn't fair to me, but I didn't know that at the time. I'd been given incorrect information that, like, you know, the going rate was, I think it was like $150 for like 3 months. So that's what I did, $150. And then suddenly you find out, no, that's not true. But a reasonable rate, I mean, it depends, because some PRs charge a lot of money because it's a work intensive thing. Other people try to go budget. But I would say anything under $200 to $250 a month is a red flag, as a general rule. Not always, but as a general rule, if the person's charging under 250, or sorry, 200 to 250, that would be a red flag to me most of the time.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense, because they have to, if they're any good, that means they have professional expenses like holics and everything else that you, so, and they probably have, you didn't even touch into like web hosting or anything like that they still have to pay for.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I got a free WordPress site, so I don't pay for that. But yes, a lot of people do. We'll talk in a few months once we get all the rest of our goals handled. But what was I going to say? So yeah, I mean, it depends, right? Like someone like me, I mean, I do this full time. I have a family I have to take care of, so I can't charge anything less than what I do. The rates I charge, just to be fully transparent, is I do $500 US a month, or I do $800 for 2 months, or $1,200 for 3, or $1,400 for 4 if paid up in front. I do that because of the fact that that's the price that I need to charge, and I think I bring a good enough value to people as a general rule. That's far above that, so I have no bones charging that. John Asher, I believe, charges roughly the same amount as I do. He might be a little bit less, a little bit more, I'm not sure, but it's roughly around the same amount as I do. But then again, there's other PR companies that are a lot cheaper than me, that have been around longer. I don't think they necessarily do as good of a job as me, and I'm not going to name names, but they charge less, and I wouldn't say that they were a ripoff by any stretch of the imagination. So it depends, right? So it depends on what you're looking for. It depends upon what kind of contact you want to have. You know, it really, it's so hard to say what for a PR when they're starting out, though. It should be 200 to 250, I would say, and anything less than that would just be red flag.
Okay, no, that definitely makes sense. And I think the title of this episode, it depends.
Well, it does, because there's never really a proper answer, because sometimes some things that I'll say is a scam can be like legit. I'll give a really good example on something that someone thought was a scam. I'm not going to say the person's name, but a band I worked with 3 years ago got in touch with me, and they said, hey, this dude just got in touch with us, and they said that he could get us in front of, like, you know, this major label. I'm like, okay, you know, that perks my ears up and makes me go, yeah, it's probably a scam, right? And he said, you know, he says that he can do all this stuff for us, but he's not asking for any money, so I don't know what the scam is. I'm like, oh yeah. And I said, who is it? And he told me the guy's name, and I was like, his name kind of rings a bell. I Googled him. This was a very well-known industry person, perfectly legit. He heard the band. He was thrilled with the band. And he ended up, like, I went to them. I was like, no, this is legit. Talk to this guy. It was his profile. The band ended up getting signed by Century Media as a result. And, you know, but like most of the time, something like that's going to be a scam, because the guy name dropped. He said, you know, I worked with this big band, multiple big bands. I was an exec at this label. I'm now an A&R, basically, blah, blah, blah. Like all the hallmarks of a scam. But in this case,
that's like a unicorn moment.
It is. But I mean, it was so, and the guy reached out via DM on Facebook to top it off.
Oh, dear.
From his personal page. So it had all the fucking hallmarks of a scam, but it was 1000% legit. And if the band hadn't taken it up and been like, this guy's a fucking scammer, they wouldn't be where they are right now. Like, I mean, they literally got signed to Century Media. They got a big PR blitz. I believe they got some good tours out of the deal and everything. But, you know, if they hadn't known that this person was that person, you know, none of that stuff would happen. So again, yeah, it all boils back down to, it depends.
It all also boils down to doing your homework, really.
Yeah.
Because that all boils down to you went and you checked, you did your homework. So to avoid scammers or shysters, because that is the word of the day.
Shyster.
The C-squared word of the day is shyster.
I love it.
Is to just do your homework on people. Check references, do a background check their social medias, check their website, and just ask questions. That's like the root of this entire podcast, is asking questions.
Yeah.
And never being afraid to ask a dumb question. Because I mean, there's really no such thing. It's all a learning experience.
Agreed. I got one last thing I want to go over before we end off, which is just kind of like, also, someone could, again, I think I might have touched on this before, but someone could legitimately have worked at some place or done something, but it could also have been a long time ago. And it might have nothing to do with today. Like, I've had people tell me, like, there's one guy that goes around screaming at the top of his lungs that he is a well-known metal journalist from Metal Underground, like one of the best known in the world. Nobody's ever heard of him. The guy hasn't written for Metal Underground since 2006. If you contact people that are associated with Metal Underground, they'll go like, hey, yeah, right. So, but in his case, it's actually true. You can go find his articles on the web. They're there. But, you know, he uses this as a buy now for his PR, you know, and he charges whatever money it is. But Metal Underground wants nothing to do with him. Most bands he's worked with wants nothing to do with him. But in that case, it was sort of true, but it was from 2007, and it's no longer really valid. So anyways, that's my final point. Oh,
yeah. So another thing to look at in the background check is how old their experience is, if it does look like it's real.
Yeah, that's 100%. So what else do we want to cover, Corey? Is that it?
Well, I think we've covered a lot, and we're coming up on 50 minutes of PR awesomeness. Give people a lot to digest. So is there anything you want to cover? Anything you want to plug while we're here? Because you let everybody else toot their horns. Do you want to toot yours?
I'm going to toot your horn for 1 second. So I just want to say that I'm just going to say that Corey does an absolutely wonderful job at writing bios. She does an absolutely wonderful job at marketing, PR, sales, the whole 9 yards. She's like an all-in-one marketing package. And she also helps me do consulting. And we have a business together called C-Squared. Wow. Well, it's actually operating under Doer PR, but we're calling it C-Squared between the two of ourselves. And if you are interested in getting in touch with us for some possible consulting, reach out. We probably will not take you on because we are very picky, but in certain cases we might, just maybe. So get in touch with us. Corey is really good at this type of stuff. She's been doing it for like 10 years, the marketing end of it. I've been doing PR for like 8 years. So we kind of know our stuff. And yeah, she's the best. And so am I. That's all I gotta say.
We're super awesome and super humble. Just ask us. We'll tell you how humble we are.
That's right. So party on, Corey.
Yeah, party on, Curtis.